All right, welcome. Today, we're going to do a little linguistic detective work. We're going to see how the translation of just one single powerful word from the New Testament might have completely shaped centuries of belief.
So let's start with the central question our source material wants us to think about. It's a pretty wild thought, right? That a word we hear all the time, a word that feels so solid, might actually mean something quite different today than what the original authors intended.
And this really gets to the heart of why any of this matters. The whole idea here is that the specific words used in Scripture are foundational. They're not just random labels. They're the actual building blocks of doctrine and belief. So, if you change the meaning of a word, you can totally change how an entire concept is understood.
Okay, so let's start our investigation. Let's look at the word itself and the hidden meaning it just might be carrying. And that word is the one we translate as church. Now just think about that for a second. When you hear the word church, what immediately pops into your head? A building, right? Or maybe a big organization, a denomination? Well, the point is that word comes preloaded with centuries of meaning that we almost never stop to question.
Now, this is where it gets really, really interesting. The original Greek word that the apostles used, it wasn't even a religious word to begin with. Its main meaning was totally secular. It meant an assembly, a gathering of people called out for some specific purpose. It was a civic term, first and foremost.
So to really get why the apostles chose this word, we've got to do a little time traveling. We need to go back and see what it meant in its original context as an assembly.
And this comparison just lays out the shift so clearly. Look at the left side. You've got the original meaning, something active, something dynamic. It's about a people assembled, a gathering for a specific reason. It's an event. Now look at the right. You see what it eventually absorbed? An institution, a hierarchical structure, an abstract idea. The key takeaway here is the shift from an active gathering of people to a much more static organizational concept.
So you might be wondering, where's the proof for this original meaning? Well, it was everywhere. The word was commonly used in Greek cities to talk about a gathering of citizens. But, and this is crucial, it was also used in the Septuagint, that's the Greek version of the Old Testament, to describe the assembled people of Israel. So the apostles, they knew exactly what they were doing. They were intentionally picking a word that already had this rich, established meaning of a people called together. So, the big question is, how did we get from a dynamic assembly of people all the way over to an institution? Well, this next part traces that journey through translation and, of course, through time.
You can really see the whole story unfold on this timeline. It starts way back in ancient Greece as a simple civic term. Then, the apostles pick it up, they give it a spiritual context, sure, but they keep its core meaning of assembly. But then, the translations start happening. And over centuries, the new words used in languages like English start to pick up all this institutional baggage. And that leads us right to today, where we have a word that's carrying a whole lot of assumptions the original Greeks simply never had.
Now look, this isn't just some academic word game. The argument is that this shift has had some profound, real-world consequences for faith and practice. So let's dig into why this one little word matters so much.
It's really like a chain reaction, a domino effect. It all starts with a simple choice in translation. Over time, that new word just soaks up all these cultural and institutional meanings from its surroundings. Then those new meanings start to influence how people actually read the Bible and form their theology. And what's the end result? Our understanding of really core concepts gets shaped not just by the original text, but by the long journey of its translation.
And what kind of concepts are we talking about? Well, we're not talking about small stuff. This linguistic shift has apparently shaped our ideas about some of the most critical areas of Christian doctrine. Things like authority, structure, unity, discipline. Even how we view ordinances like baptism and communion. They're all seen through the lens of this translated word and all the meaning it's picked up along the way.
So, what's the answer? Where do we go from here? Well, the conclusion isn't some radical new doctrine. It's actually much simpler. It's a call to go back to the source.
I think this quote from the source material just perfectly captures the spirit of this whole thing. The goal isn't to tear everything down. It's pointing out that historically, some of the biggest moments of renewal and clarity have been sparked by people simply going back to the original text and asking, wait a minute, what did this actually say?
And it's so important to really emphasize this point. This kind of deep dive isn't about starting fights or winning arguments. It's presented as an invitation for all of us to humbly take another look at the words we use, just to see if maybe we can recover a clearer picture of what the Scriptures originally wanted to say. And that leaves us with this final, really powerful question. It kind of sums up the whole journey we've been on. I mean, if digging into the history of just one word can open up such a different way of looking at things, just imagine what other insights are waiting there for us if we're just willing to look closely at the language of the original texts. It's a fascinating thought to end on. Thanks for joining me.